So good evening, ladies. I do hope that everyone is well. For a change, it looks like my technology hasn't failed me, which is brilliant. Let me just silence that and make sure I can see your comments on my phone, which is always a good starting point. Excellent. Hi Anthony, so I've managed to at least get live now, so let me just tuck that out of the way. No, we won't put it around the paint water, we'll move that out of the way. So there we are. Hi Caroline, thank you for joining us this evening, it's much appreciated. Much appreciated. I'll swap that so you can see my ugly mug instead of the mess on my desk, which is always good. Excuse the inelegance of me pulling up my trousers. Hi Patty, hi Joan, hi Diane, thank you for coming and joining us. Hello Sabine, thank you so much for joining us. I really do hope we'll see some of your beautiful work using Madges on here at some stage in the future. It would be lovely. We're going to wait before I start my projects because clearly I've gone live a little bit earlier because that's my fear of technology failing. So I've just got to show some of my samples that I've made for the Pentart show that is on Create and Craft at 9 AM on Monday, which of course is the start of the school holidays. So Pentart made some suggestions, including a watermelon bag, and these clearly aren't a watermelon bag, but I think the suggestions would work really well. Bright, funky, suitable coasters for using outside, fun make to do with children, great for children's parties and things. So you know, a really quite a nice suggestion. These are made with neon paints, but most of the products on the show are actually fabric orientated, and I'm going to run out of space, but hey ho. We have some dimensional pens in the show, and the paler dots on here are pale green glow in the dark, and they really do glow in the dark, but in the conservatory obviously that's not going to show. Hi Jill, hi Kim, thank you for joining us. Hello Carol, I don't think I said hello to you earlier, but they really are a nice way of just adding a little bit to a cheap pair of children's sandals or pumps for outside. And of course you could decorate these in lots of ways. I am no artist, it has to be said. Here is a little apron. So this is a child size apron. They're easy to find on Amazon in family packs, and this uses the fabric paint, so once it's heat set it will go in the wash, and I think adults would love one just as much as anything else, and the stamps are stamperia. So here's the watermelon that I was encouraged to get to make. This is actually on a cheap fabric mat. You can see the reverse side of it from a well-known DIY, a cheap store, left over from Easter, and clearly I decided to update it for the summer. I think it looked really cute on a table outside, and of course although I wouldn't necessarily be able to heat set this, if you just leave it a week before it gets wet, actually the materials are dry. And the colour balance isn't quite right on my camera because it really is actually a red, not an orange. Thanks Anthony. So the next make we have is is on the same theme as fruit, is using the same base, is an orange, but this could just as easily be a lime or a lemon. You take it and it's really easy. And then I thought maybe we'd have something a little bit more adult. We've got children going back to school, we can always all do with a little iPad or Chromebook, a little pouch. So I've decorated one of those in some more muted colours, which I love them. How the case apron would fit me. I can use the polythene case crafting it. Well, Carol, they're lovely. They are quite small. I'm 5 foot, but rather large around the middle, and the ties don't meet. But if you're a slim lady, then I think you're right. I think they would. Thank you, Sabine. I have to say I do really like this one as well. It's a much more adult make, but I was thinking more about children's activities when I was making these, and garden parties, as our kids in the UK have just started their school holidays, and it's been rainy, and we all need indoor rainy activities or cheap children's entertainment. I have a little gym bag. One of these are on the show, and again with the watermelon, and that, I apologise, that really is a bright red colour. Petite 4.9, so the length would definitely be all right for you, Carol. It's a question of whether the ties would be long enough, because they're quite short, but if you are very petite, I think they would work. And then I had a little bit of a play. I didn't have anything black, so I've actually used a canvas, because canvas is material right, and I've used some fabric medium to glue my glitter on, stenciled with the paints, and this, once it's dry and set, will actually be safe to hand wash if I wanted to at 40 degrees. So there we are. So that's some of the makes for the show. I'm not going to bore you with lots more of them, but because honest life is too short really, but I just thought I'd show you what I've been up to, and the sort of concepts for the show. And then we're going to go on, we're going to be making an altered embroidery hoop. I've got a much bigger hoop, it's about 12 inches, again they're cheap enough to buy, and a stamperia stencil that's from an old collection, but it is still available if anyone wanted to find it. And I'm just going to pop this in on my piece of fabric, and I've got some modelling paste. And this is a decorative item. I wouldn't, purely house decorative item. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that we use this for on a piece of wearable material. And this is really just to show you the steps that we're going to use. I've got some of the bits already pre-prepared. I'm glad they're right up your street, Patty. I think that they're lovely, and they're not difficult to do. As I say, I am not someone who can draw or paint. I definitely am someone who uses crafting products, but painting, decorating, nah, definitely not my skill set. Could do a good line in Aliens when I'm painting. So the first thing I did was just take my stencil. I have got some water near me, so let me just pop that into the water and put some modelling paste through my stencil onto my paper, onto my material, and then let that dry, because that's clearly the next most sensible thing to do. And so here's one I have done earlier, and then it's obviously much smaller because it's not intended as a permanent piece to use. It's really as a step by step. Hi Sarah Lou, thank you very much. It's definitely cooled down for me tonight. It's been raining in that well-known wet and windy place called Manchester, so I'm just going to give my fabric a little bit of a soaking. Now the Pentart fabric mists are water based, so it's safe to use those with water, and I'm just going to give it a good spritz with the blue, and I've got a bit of yellow, and this one is getting down, so there we are. And I've got one called Toffee, which you think might be really brown, but actually it's not so brown, and you can just let the colours mix and merge to your heart's content, and you'll get some nice green shades in the process of doing this, so it just makes life easy, and you can give it a jolly good spritz, and it'll help the shifting of stuff around. She says, covering herself because that sprayed backwards at me, but hey ho. So there we are. And if you think that there's too much colour on there as it dries, then just take a wet baby wipe, and you can lift it in areas and it will fade out. So you can give a sky effect if you want, and it will lift off the stenciling even when it's dry. So look, she says, and I hate wasting that, but I am going to just pop that out of the way. pop that to dry. Make sure I don't hit that on my samples, because that wouldn't be great. Thank you, Elaine. They are lovely to work with, and they've, I know sometimes misters can be a pain, but these are pretty good at not clogging, and the colours are really vibrant. They will all mute down, and so sort of when it's finished and dried, you get this type of effect, which I think is beautiful and much more muted than those vibrant bright colours. But you take your choice and you do what what suits you. So let me pop that one out of the way. Now I've obviously going to use that to fill my canvas, and I wanted some extra embellishments, and I've chosen some materials here that aren't actually on the show, I know, but actually I think people will like. And I'm sure some of you will have seen that there's a well-known company that is shutting up shop, who's been probably most of our go-tos for Stamperia products. Can I reassure everyone that there are definitely moves afoot to get a new distributor stroke big supplier in the UK. I opened a Stamperia light clay and it's just crumbling. Is it me? No, Angela, it's very definitely not just you. It's a clay that really needs absolutely minimal handling. And I probably shouldn't say it because I am on one of the Stamperia design teams, but it's probably my least favourite of the clays. I would totally support you when Anthony says you need the hearty clay, but buy Artista Soft from Artista Soft because it's cheaper. Now I'm using a product called Sparkling Gels, and that's because they've got almost a glittery mica in them, and I'm not really a glittery person, but I do think that element of sparkle helps when you are doing sea-themed projects really. So I've got the sparkling olive gold here, which the clue is in the name. It's got a gold undertone to it, and I've got a little bit of the brown for the face. I think my MDF pieces are probably Mad Hatters from a long time ago, but any embellishment, MDF embellishment that's sea themed will work perfectly well. You're very welcome, Angela. I think it is difficult otherwise, but because the Stamperia clay does work, but for selected uses, and this is the gold, and I'm deliberately using these straight onto my MDF, not priming it, because I want to be able to see through to the wood underneath. Now these are as I say, semi transparent, so that you can see through, but they will dry with an incredible sparkle. And so I just chose to work with some of these colours, and I opened up the gold. There's a few colours in the set, and there's also something that's called green gold, but I think in the UK you'll disagree with me that when this is more of a turquoise than a true green gold. I think it's definitely has a turquoisey tone. So we'll carry on quite happily painting these, and I mix my colours. On my shapes, adding some of the browns for depth and for detail, just to mix it up, because plants aren't really a single flat tone, are they? They are all mixed up together. And then I maybe don't want, I'll leave that one. I've got a whole mountain of these pre-prepared. Do they do many different colours? They do. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 or 6 colours in these sparkling gels, and they are beautiful. I think you might just have to wait for them to come in with the new supplier when they come in, but they are really very beautiful, and they apply nicely, and I will be able to see the markings on the MDF through them once they're dried. As I say, if you wanted the true colours, then you might be better off adding a primer, but I made a very specific decision today that I wasn't going to, because I wanted to take advantage of the natural brown colour underneath. But as I say, I do think these are well worth thinking about investing in if you can find them, or maybe when they eventually come on. And I will do my best at some point to bring them onto air. I did get that on. No, I didn't get that on the right one. At some point in the future, though I'm not going to promise you quite when I will get them to air, because that's not always in my control. They may not just not be enough in stock. Let me get these round the right way. Of course, we're going to end up in a pickle in a minute. All gold, white gold. There we are, green gold that's blue. It's really designed to confuse me. It doesn't take much as I've got older to do that. And then I'm just going to add some of the gold one. The gold is again very pretty. These are not fabric paints, that's for sure. There are alternative fabric paints that are glittery, and I will show but these aren't. So you can look at the delicate and the glamour paints and the fabric range if you want to. Glamour on fabric, but as I say, you can just add glitter straight to your fabric pieces. So there we are. So those are just some of the little MDF shapes I have, and obviously you would spend as much time as you wanted and do it really neatly or not, as the case may be. The choice is yours. As I say, I have a whole mountain of them pre-prepared because that's cool. I'm going to now make a mess. I know that I want this, my embroidery frame, to have a dream catchery type feel, and so I have got a collection of ribbons here that I've just plain white. I've got a little bit of grey, and I've got some 4mm macrame thread. And I know it's a sea theme project, but I also wanted some flowers. So I've got some flowers here, and I'm just again going to give them a jolly good squirt in the same way as I did my first lot of fabric. And this isn't a project where you can guarantee that you're going to get the same results every single time. It is one where you're going to have to go with the flow. So if you're a complete control freak, i.e. me, then it's not necessarily the easiest thing, because the colours will continue to move the whole time everything is wet. So let me just give this a little bit of good spray, and you think, good grief, that's bright, and I know it is. And I'm just going to turn that over, and we'll add some toffee. I do have another pot, but I don't like waste, so there we are, because I like the toffee colour. And we'll give that another little mix around, and it feels a bit dry, so let me just give it another jolly good soak. And this is literally all that I did. I just literally mixed it up as I went with the sprays. The fabric sprays are in the show. They're, as I say, they're designed to be heat set. So you could make coloured ribbons for your children quite happily, to suit yourself. There we are, and we'll just carry on. So at this point, it's really up to you how much colour you add. It will continue to evolve over time, and of course you can come back to them as you want to. I'm deliberately not being overly precious about this. Got some yellow to add here, but my yellow is definitely on its last legs, and it's not so easy to get at the moment. There we are. We'll pop that one out of the way, wipe the mucky hands, and revert back to the toffee. As I say, And you just, as I say, you just carry on with your flowers, which these were just cheap white faux flowers. Give them a good mix, give it a little massage. You'll end up with mucky hands. Tell me a crafter who doesn't. You can leave some bits white. It's entirely up to you, and the colours will mix. And by doing this, you'll get a real mixture of different colours and effects and variations, so, which is why no two projects are always ever going to be the same. Now, depending on how paranoid you are about things, then you get beautiful coloured baby wipes, and of course these can be left to dry and then die cut into floral shapes to make different things, so they're quite cool. So those are going to go to dry. Yes, Anthony, they are really quite vibrant, but let me show you them once they're dry. Just, well, I've got lots of space, isn't there? Because actually once they're dry, they're really not as vibrant at all. And this is something I find quite often with sprays, is that they become much more subtle. The bright yellow will stay bright yellow, and obviously if you saturate stuff and don't put any water to help distribute it, then you get a far brighter colour effect overall. And then I've added in some more hand-dyed ribbons in assorted sea themed and a little bit of purple colour. So I've got a nice selection there to choose from. So that's the prep work for the basis for the whole project. So let me just offload all of my pieces. So this is the one I'm going to build my project on. So there we are, and you can tuck in the edges, glue those down. I've got a hot glue gun, so let me just tuck those out of the way now. It just makes life easy. Takes them out of the way. You can neaten up the back as and when you want to, but I do suggest that you leave the pieces in until you're ready to do it, rather than necessarily chopping them off. And there we are. Let's just tuck those in out of the way. I'm going to pop some glue there where I haven't got any, because I have my piece. I'm very lucky. My material actually comes from a friend who my son works for, and they make all sorts of things from the materials. So these are all scraps, so it doesn't have to be expensive material. The fabric paints definitely work better on something that has a high cotton content, though, because they need to be heat set on a cotton setting to be washable. Then a lot of the man-made fibres are not so good for it. So there we are. So we have one embroidery hoop with some tidied up edges, and then I have a whole collection of projects. And am I a Wally? Oh yes, I am a Wally. So yeah, because what did I want to do before I glued this down? Thankfully I've glued it on the inner surface, because who is a pro? Yeah. So that should now be held in place, hopefully. There we are. There we are. Right, so I don't know what anyone's macrame skills are like. I know it's something from from the past, but now all I'm going to do, let me move that so you can see what I'm doing, is something called a lark's head knot. So I've got my ribbon folded in half. This is actually a piece of gauze coloured. I've got my loop underneath, and all I'm doing is passing the tails through the loop and pulling it tight. And I'm just going to carry on with that, layering my pieces, which is why I had such a lot of them done, and why I've chosen to work with different textures, because I've got quite a long hoop here. So let me chop that one up a bit. We don't need quite so much, and of course at the end of it you can trim them to suit, but I thought that they would look a little bit, you can't see what I'm doing, let me pop that right over there. They would end up looking a little bit like I think seaweed was the thought I was going for in amongst all of this. So I just, I'm going to carry on adding. They don't need to be all exactly the same, but they're all tonally work, and even my purples work for me. So yeah, we are. It was just a question of adding these around a reasonable part of the hoop of the ring. So let me see. Good evening, Blanche. Hello, how are you? I'm glad you've managed to join us this evening. It's lovely to see you. Now then, for those of you eagle-eyed that have watched it, you've realised that I've actually coloured my ring, and because I'd forgotten about that, I coloured my ring with a metallic-y paint, and I've deliberately chosen the Fabric Delica and the dark, the blue silver, to give me again a watery effect around the edge of that. And that's just a question of, surprisingly, just painting it in place, really, rather than anything more complicated than that. Thank you, Jeanette. I love these, and for me, projects are about colours. I would have said as a child, I liked more of the autumnal colours than maybe the greens and the blues, but definitely nowadays I'm drawn to the greens and the blues more than anything else. And as I say, this is called a lark's head knot, but it's the starting point for most crochet activities. So, and you can see actually this type of project, partly because of the size of the hoop I decided to work with. And why did I decide to work with this size hoop? Well, that's because it was the size that I had at home. Other than that, it was a very small one, and I felt that the whole thing actually suited the the bigger hoop better for me. So it's all about proportion, just as colours are all about working with things that work together. So I've kept, by choice, to the cooler tones here. I've got some string, so let me add, and you can move these around. So I'd forgotten I've got the macrame rope, so I'm just going to slide that out of the way. I can add this into there. I might move that one out of the way. We'll add another one here into that bit. There we are. So, we've got lots of it. It does take up, if you've got a ribbon stash you need to use up, or you're thinking about needing to use up, I do think this is a good way of being able to use things up. I'm just going to move that along a little bit and pop that into there. So would help if I got it in the middle. Maybe I won't move it onto there because it's quite a short piece that I've chopped, but again, it doesn't really matter because it's about going with the flow and what's working for you. At the end of the day, everyone has projects that they like. We all have things that we don't like in life, but it's, if we mix and match what we do, then we can be happy with our creations. That's all that really is important, isn't it? Is the fact that we can enjoy life. And of course, any of the leftover bits, so I will give this a haircut now. I've moved back offline, so you can see I'm actually getting quite a good layer now of different things, and I think this piece is a bit too wide. So let me see if brute force strength and ignorance, because that was a well-known crafting activity, will allow me to hopefully, well, shred it into two, and the answer is no. It's come off at the side, but there we are. Let's have another, see if we can get a longer length that's a bit narrower. Clearly life is deciding to be not going to let me do that today, so there we are. We'll just go with what we've got now, and we'll put it in, but it will be a bit thinner at the bottom. There we are. I'm really sorry, Sally. I think the internet, is very difficult, isn't it? And Facebook doesn't help either when it comes to things dropping in and out. I think we all get frustrated. We get to the critical part of doing something with whatever we're doing, and suddenly we can't see what's going on, and it's incredibly frustrating. So there we are. Let's just add another one of those. Now then, is that reasonably symmetrically balanced? Answer on that page, no it's not, but hey ho, we can just shuffle some of those up a little bit. There we are, we'll shuffle that one into there. We'll add another, we'll stick it right there crossed over, so we'll uncross those and we'll pop that one into there. And obviously you can add as many or as few as you want. As I say, I thought I had prepared lots of them, but clearly not enough. But there we are. So we've got a nice mixed hang off the bottom of our hoop, all mixing together, assorted various lengths. Some of them are too long and will definitely get a haircut. But there we are. Right. So now we need just to centre our hoop over the word Sea Dream, because if I don't have it reasonably centred, it will irritate me considerably. There we are. So that can go over there, and we can tighten that up into place. So let's shovel that lot all out of harm's way, and let's move that to a place where we can see what we're doing. So we now have the basis of our dream catcher all sorted out, and I've thought about what I want to do. So I always start by sort of adding my bits where I might want to put them. I think I might like him there, and I'm going to pop him up there because I think he looks nice there, and we're going to pop him onto there. So I'm with this, I don't mind that it's hanging off the edge of the canvases, because that's part of the joy of what we're doing. And I've got some of my MDF pieces, so let me take some of these. So I've got, these are Stamperia Romantic Sea Dreams chipboard die cuts. So that one's going to go somewhere there. We might put a different shape there. We'll put that one over there. We're going to stick that maybe a bit further over so that they're not quite so. There we are. We'll have an added anchor, because why not? Every beach has an anchor. And I'm just popping these sort of where I want them at the moment, because I'm working out approximately what I want to do for my composition. There, as I say, there doesn't have to be anything so terribly precise, but I think it will help me long term if I at least start out by popping things where I want them to be. So there we are. We might pop that there and pop the third one there, and then we've got some shells to tuck around the place. So we might, and I could say there's nothing wrong with building up our layers, and I think I might have skedaddled some of my bits onto the floor, but there you are, because I know I had some smaller shells and some different shape shells already pre-prepared, but hey ho. So we'll tuck that one, maybe not, maybe we'll pop that one into there. So we're sort of got a composition that I vaguely like, and I've got some other bits and pieces that I want to add. I feel that at the moment that this one is too big, so I'm going to start by gluing some of these into place, and my preference is going to be my gel medium, because I've got a mixture of wood, MDF and grey board and all sorts of other activities. So let me just pop this onto here now then, so he can go there because I like him half on half off, and he can go there partly on and partly off. And let's just pop some of these in for ease at this point. Thank you, Blanche, I'm glad you like the elements. They are Some of them I've had in my stash for quite a while, but they will build together quite nicely. So this is just the Pentart Express glue. It grabs quite quickly. Doesn't necessarily give me the wriggle room I might want, but it will at least allow me to pop the stuff on with a degree of accuracy. I don't know whether I want to add some ink around the edge of that one. I'm not going to. I think I'm going to keep it clear because the edges of these are grey and the white on the back is going to be pretty much hidden. So I know I want to tuck this behind because we're building depth and detail, and I think I'd like to cover that edge of that. So that will need some gel medium because it's going to go over the MDF, and it's also going to be sitting a little bit more proud of the canvas in areas. So if I pop that on like that, that's going to help cover that. And don't worry, the gel medium will dry clear, so that's always a good starting point for all of this activity. Now, I'm very much aware that this isn't going to touch all the surfaces that I'm putting glue on, but that doesn't matter either, as long as it grabs in some of them, because we're going to add some extra pieces anyway over the top of here. So I'm literally, this is about just getting a composition that you're happy with, and it's never, I don't know, again, you play to your heart's content, don't you, when you're making for yourself. So at home you can spend ages. I did sort of think about what I was going to do, because I think that's sort of helpful to have had a little bit of a think about it. Right, excellent. So that's going on there. He's going to go on to there. So let me take my anchor and pop that onto there. So we're building our layers. That one can come over there, partly on, partly off. That can go over there, so we'll add a good dollop of gel medium to park that onto there. That will also help to anchor that other piece of seaweed, and then we'll add some gel medium onto you. So you can go into there, and we might add, let me think, I think some bits have gone walkabouts, but that's okay. So we're going to pop that one onto there because I rather like the shape of that, and it's sitting, bridging the gap between those. And we're going to add another shell tucked under there. I'll take that one off there, and I've managed to go and throw something down there, so that's always really good fun, isn't it, when you pop stuff into the bin that's beside you when you're crafting. But that's what my lovely husband will sort out for me, because he's really good at going delving in my rubbish bin to sort out stuff for me when I've gone and misplaced it. So that can go there. That's sitting there. He's going to sit there. So we're getting gradually, bit by bit, beginning to build where we're going with this. So I've got another shell, so I think I might tuck him possibly there. But before we do that, I have got lots of my flowers that I dyed here, and I have a couple of different types. So I'm going to now fill some of these areas around where I have them. It's artistic license, isn't it, at the end of the day, to add flowers into a beach scene. I don't think there's anything right or the wrong way to deal with this, but you can see there, if I sort of put these where I want them to be, then actually I've got I can build myself a composition that I'm happy with. So let's pop that one maybe into there, and we'll pop another one of those into there. So that's sort of where I'm going. So I'm going to stick these down because that again is the starting, but I'm going to be leaving some areas, so she says, so that I can tuck other elements in and around as I go. So there we are, we'll pop that there. But I do, yeah, I just think it's about building up what suits you as you go. You know, you might choose only to use gel medium at this stage, but I'm quite happy to use my hot glue gun at this point. It's an art piece, it's not something that I expect to live forever and a day, which is maybe just as well, because I have way too many good things in my stash to be keeping everything for ever and ever. There we are, and we pop these into place. I can hear something, or is it your phone? No, Angela, you can hear hear something. The heavens have decided to open. The joys of my craft room is that it's a conservatory. Now, you know, that means that my phone overheats and then goes off part way through lives if I'm not very careful. But it also means that when it's throwing it down, the whole world knows about it. But never mind. There we are. Let me fish out another one of those, because I think I've probably got most of those where I want them at this point. So there we are, and I've got some more bits and pieces that I can start to add in to here. So I think that that's going to look quite nice tucked in that. She says, getting stuff everywhere, so we'll pop that, and we're going to pop a good dollop of that there. I was keeping them for a rainy day. Yeah, that's one way of looking at what I was doing with it. I've got some little floral pieces so they can tuck in, maybe underneath there. Just poke their little heads out a little bit. That can go tucked under there. You might wonder why I actually bothered to put any of the you know, the stenciling in the background, but when you're starting out something like this, I don't think you ever really know quite where you're going to go. So I think I'm going to pop him actually onto there, or maybe I'm going to leave him out because I think he might be. Let me see what we have that we might prefer. So actually, I think he sits better in there. My gel medium is a matte gel medium, and it will dry clear. But I am going to lift some of it off from squirging out there, partly because of some of the next moves that I'm going to take. Because I have really used a real smorgasbord of products on this, some of which, as I say, have recently been on the TV shows. So we're now building quite a nice mix of different things. I've got a space I can tuck things into, and I think I am going to now add an extra, that extra piece can go tucked under there, and again just poked off the side of there. I've got a couple more little flowers, so maybe I'm going to add another one of those into there, or maybe, no, I think that looks quite nice, so we'll pop that one into there. So pop that there, and we're going to pop that one tucked underneath there. So now I've got my composition set out in an arc, and I'm going to pop my extra fish into here because I think it's going to look nicer with a set of 3. Some of the ribbons that I have dried, that I've made tonight, that when they're dry I will add as my hanger. So there we are. So that's reasonably balanced. Now for me that still doesn't quite look finished, and at this point I thought I'm going to, maybe I won't add that as fabric paint, maybe we'll revert to this. So I'm just going to dot in, and I don't mind that I'm going to go over where my hoop joins, or over some of my makes. and I will have great fun at some point because I will need to lift it up. But I'm just going to add some little art stones into this mix to fill in some of the bases and give my composition almost a grounding, so that pieces aren't just floating in the air. There we are. Oops, she says throwing that away. So I've just literally put some of my express glue in, and I've got the small 3D balls here. So and I'm going to pop some of these into these areas. I will have to be careful when I pick this up because the gel medium is going to be a while to dry, and that's fine, that's what it's needed. So there we are, and that's the whole intention of this. I want to add a little bit more of that up there and also into there. So there we are. So those are those, and of course the C's are glittery, but I'm a bit adverse to glitter, so we're just going to add into some of these areas some extra bits of sparkle, and I'm also going to dot the sparkle onto my floral stamens, and this is just going to add that little bit of sort of sea feel to everything, and give it an effect of water, and some of it will, I think, sit into the crevices around where I haven't put any art stones. So there we are. So that's where those are going to go. We'll pop a little bit more there. You can of course put them, actually all of this, onto the ribbons if you want to as well. So I think it was the lid for that went for a button earlier. So I have here two different galaxy flakes. I have the Jupiter white, which has an AB feel. There is a Mercury white that is more silver, but this is definitely an AB feel. And also I have Uranus blue, so which is again a very pretty colour with a slight AB feel to it. I think you can see there. So I'm literally just going to scatter these around. Like I say, I probably won't pick it up to shake it all off tonight during the live, because I can see that will end up with other bits falling across. But literally all I'm doing is adding some of those bits onto here, and I'm going to add, and a lot of this will fall off, but I will, because I'm mixing my two colours on the project, I will behave and put them into a pot on their own. So there we are. And of course you can add as much as you want or as little as you want. It's entirely up to you at this point. There we are. So let us see whether we can cautiously lift it up for you, because it's not quite guaranteed at this point how much of those pieces that I've stuck on there are going to stay sitting in place and how much of them might fall off. You can see how good that glue is though, that I used the express glue, because actually there we are, not a single piece of the composition has fallen off. I will tuck those safely out of the way. So there we are, we might just move that a little bit. I still think it is missing something, and I'm definitely a splatter girl, I'm afraid. Some people like, some people don't, but for me it needs a little bit of lifting. It's a little too blue. So let me just grab some white fabric paint and just give it a little bit of a spatter to pull all my elements together. And as I say, I will add a ribbon tie once it's all dried and I'm happy with the final overall effect. So that completes the project. I hope that you like it. I will let this dry. I will photograph it tomorrow because the light has definitely faded out of the day, and I will post it in the group and also on my own page at that point. So I hope that's everything that has been helpful and that people have enjoyed watching me make my piece. It will appear on Selly Telly as one of my studio samples, because why not? And it uses lots of the projects and mediums. Thank you, Karen. My show is at 9 o'clock in the morning, Anthony. I'm safely travelling down on Sunday afternoon. Thank you, Sarah Lou. That's lovely. Thank you, Charmaine. I'm glad you like the look of it. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you for joining me this evening. Thank you very much. I'm so pleased that you like it. It's been quite fun to make, and I hope, although I did have quite, some of the pieces pre-prepared, it hasn't taken me a ridiculous amount of time. Now I know that that's because I knew where I was going, and that always helps. But this is a true mixed media project with lots of different techniques and mediums, and I hope it shows that you can make a beautiful home decor piece using mixed media techniques, and with a good supply of different materials and mediums, then you can make whatever you want to do. So that's all for now. Stay safe, and hopefully I will be doing some more lives in August for the group. Bye for now.